It was 3 a.m. when Lisa Aniston lamented, sobbing, another missed chance to improve her financial situation. The worst part was that, again, she had lost the opportunity for lacking confidence and letting fear take over. This time, an $8,000 monthly salary slipped through her fingers, like sand, because she would have to make presentations to bosses about weekly results. Just thinking about public speaking made Lisa start trembling to the point of shaking the walls of her tiny rented apartment. Take a deep breath for a moment and put yourself in this situation. You're facing the opportunity of your lifetime, the one that could change everything, but something inside your chest tightens. Your mind fires 1,000 excuses and you simply let it pass. Again, Lisa Aniston knew this feeling better than anyone. At 28 years old, she had an impressive collection of missed opportunities. Not for lack of intelligence, she was brilliant. Not for lack of chances, they appeared constantly. But for something much more cruel, an internal system that sabotaged her exactly in the most important moments. Hi, I'm Charlie, presenter of this channel. Here we tell stories based on real facts of people who overcame fears, blocks, and beliefs to achieve financial abundance. Today's story can inspire you to achieve the transformation you desire. What Lisa discovered will shock you because her poverty had absolutely nothing to do with lack of opportunities. It had everything to do with something that happened in her brain for exactly 17 seconds every morning, programming her to avoid success as if it were mortal danger. While her less qualified colleagues moved up in life, Lisa watched from the sidelines, trapped in a mental cage that she herself built every day without realizing. Until a scientific discovery about neuroplasticity revealed the secret that changed everything. How to reprogram the brain's alarm system that blocks our confidence. If you've ever felt small before great opportunities, if you've ever let fear decide for you, if you've ever wondered why other people succeed and you don't, prepare for a transformation that can begin in your next 17 seconds. Lisa went from an administrative assistant with $1,200 salary to over $12,000 per month in just 3 months. And the most incredible part? The method she used is so simple that anyone can apply it, but so powerful that it can reprogram decades of mental conditioning. Get ready to begin your own transformation and start by exercising gratitude for this knowledge having reached you. For this, I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Let's discover how Lisa broke the self-sabotage cycle that kept her poor and how you can do the same. It was a great Tuesday in November when Lisa Aniston found herself doing something she had sworn never to do, stalking former colleagues on the internet. But it wasn't common curiosity. It was self-imposed torture that she repeated whenever anxiety about her financial situation became unbearable. There was Jennifer, her former work colleague, now marketing director of a multinational company. Estimated salary, $95,000 annually. Lisa remembered perfectly when the supervisor position had opened 2 years ago. Jennifer didn't even have experience in the area, but applied anyway. Lisa, who knew every company process like the palm of her hand, didn't even send her resume. I wasn't ready, she murmured to herself, repeating the same excuse she had used for years. She continued scrolling the feed. Marcus, the IT guy who barely spoke Spanish properly, now worked remotely for a Spanish company. Lisa remembered the free Spanish course the company offered. In the first class, when the teacher asked each one to introduce themselves, Lisa felt her heart race. The words simply wouldn't come out. She mumbled an excuse about being sick and never returned. But the worst was yet to come. She clicked on David Chun's profile, her former college colleague. The photo showed him on a Manhattan penthouse, champagne glass in hand, radiant smile. The caption said, "Celebrating the sale of TechFlow solutions. Thanks to everyone who believed from the beginning." Lisa's blood froze. 3 years ago, David had approached her with a crazy proposal. He wanted to create an application to optimize administrative processes in small companies. He needed someone who understood operations, someone who knew how companies really worked inside. He offered 20% of the company in exchange for her experience. Lisa remembered the conversation as if it were yesterday. They were in a cafe near her office, David gesticulating animatedly while explaining his vision. She saw the potential, understood exactly what he wanted to do. But when it came time to decide, fear spoke louder. "I don't understand anything about technology," she had said. "What if it goes wrong?" David tried to convince her, explain that she didn't need to understand technology, just business. But Lisa had already made her decision. She always made the same decision, the safest one, the one that didn't involve risks, the one that kept her exactly where she was. Now, with trembling hands, she clicked on the news link. TechFlow Solutions sold for $2 million. 20% of $2 million is $400,000 that could have been hers. Lisa closed the laptop with such force that she thought it would break. She got up from the kitchen table of her tiny apartment and began pacing back and forth, hands in her hair. Her mind raced at breakneck speed, reviewing each missed opportunity, each moment when she chose fear instead of courage. The presentation to the board that she passed to Sarah, a less experienced colleague, because she didn't feel prepared. Sarah got the promotion and today earns double what Lisa earned before being fired. The $5,000 freelance job she lost because she couldn't do the pitch by video call. The simple idea of turning on the camera and talking to strangers made her cancel the meeting at the last hour. The interview for the dream company that she canceled 2 hours before, inventing an excuse about being sick. The truth is, she spent the previous night vomiting from nerves, imagining all the ways she could humiliate herself. Each memory was a stab. Each missed opportunity, proof that she was her own worst enemy. Lisa let herself fall on the couch, the weight of realization crushing her chest like a giant stone. "I could have been rich," she said aloud to the empty apartment. "I could have had a completely different life if I had had courage." But there was something even more disturbing about this perception. It wasn't as if opportunities were rare. They appeared constantly. It was as if the universe was constantly offering chances for her to grow, evolve, prosper. And she, systematically, rejected them. Why? That was the question hammering in her head. Why would an intelligent, capable person with so much potential repeatedly choose mediocrity? Why did she sabotage her own chances of success as if it were an addiction? Lisa looked at the bank statement open on the table. $1,247. It was all that remained from years of work. The $950 rent would be due in 3 days, consuming almost all the money she still had. In that moment, something changed inside her. It wasn't a smooth, gradual change. It was like a switch being turned on violently. A crystalline decision, hard as diamond, formed in her mind. "Enough," she said, and her voice echoed differently in the silent apartment. "Either I discover how to have courage to grab opportunities, or I accept being poor and mediocre for the rest of my life. There's no middle ground." She took an old notebook and began to write. At the top of the page, she wrote, "Opportunities I wasted for lack of confidence." The list grew quickly. 7 big opportunities in the last 3 years. 7 chances to change her life. 7 times she chose fear. But while she wrote, something interesting began to emerge. There was a pattern. In all situations, the exact moment when she gave up was always the same. When she needed to expose herself, when she needed to trust herself, when she needed to act despite fear. It was as if there existed an internal system, an automatic mechanism that protected her from any situation involving risk or exposure. But protected from what, exactly? From failure? From rejection? From judgment? Lisa realized she was on the threshold of an important discovery about herself. There was something operating behind the scenes of her mind, something she had never questioned or examined closely. Something that transformed opportunities into threats, possibilities into dangers. She closed the notebook and looked out the window. Outside, life continued. People coming and going, pursuing their dreams, building their lives. And there she was, trapped in a cage she herself had built, key in hand, but without courage to open the door. But something had changed that afternoon. For the first time in years, Lisa wasn't just recognizing the problem. She was determined to understand it, to discover how this internal self-sabotage system worked. And more importantly, she was decided to break it. What Lisa didn't know is that she was about to discover something that would change not only her financial life, but her complete understanding of how the human mind works. Something that neuroscience was just beginning to unravel, and that would explain why intelligent and capable people like her get trapped in behavior, patterns that prevent them from prospering. But first, she would need to face the most painful truth of all, that the biggest obstacle between her and financial abundance wasn't out there in the world. It was inside her own head, operating silently for decades, keeping her safe in mediocrity. 3 days after the devastating revelation about David and the 400,000 lost dollars, Lisa was in a state she could only describe as functional despair. She continued doing life's basic tasks, eating, sleeping, looking for temporary jobs, but inside, something had definitely broken. It was Friday, 2 in the morning, and she was once again browsing the internet searching for answers she didn't even know how to formulate. She had started researching how to have more confidence, but the results were always the same: superficial articles about body posture, positive affirmations, and fake it till you make it. "I've tried all of this," she murmured to the laptop screen, frustrated. "I've done affirmations. I've tried to force myself to be brave. Nothing works." That's when she typed something different in the search bar. Why intelligent people sabotage opportunities. She didn't expect to find anything scientific, but the third result made her stop breathing for a second. Neuroplasticity and avoidance patterns. How the brain creates counterproductive protection systems. Dr. Sarah Chan, Stanford University. Lisa clicked the link and found herself before a study that seemed to have been written specifically for her. The abstract began like this: individuals with high intelligence frequently develop sophisticated neural avoidance systems that protect them from perceived risks, but inadvertently block opportunities for growth and prosperity. "My God," she whispered, feeling a chill run down her spine. That's exactly it. She began reading with an intensity she hadn't felt in years. The study explained something revolutionary. The human brain possesses a primitive alarm system, located primarily in the amygdala, that was developed to keep us alive in dangerous environments. The problem is this system cannot distinguish between a saber-toothed tiger and a business opportunity. When a person experiences rejection, failure, or judgment in exposure situations, Lisa read aloud. The brain categorizes these experiences as survival threats and creates neural patterns to avoid them in the future. Lisa stopped reading and closed her eyes. Immediately, a memory emerged with crystalline clarity. She was 8 years old and was in a school presentation about dinosaurs. She had prepared for weeks, knew everything about the subject. But when her turn came to speak, she forgot everything. She stood there, in front of the class, in total silence, until she started crying. The laughter of the other children echoed in her memory as if it had happened yesterday. In that moment, her 8-year-old brain had learned a lesson. Exposure equals danger. Avoid at all costs. She returned to the study, now with her heart racing. The most fascinating part was yet to come. The researchers had discovered that this mental alarm system activated more intensely in the first moments after waking, when the brain was processing the previous day's experiences and programming expectations for the new day. The critical period of neural programming occurs in the first 17 seconds after awakening. The text continued. During this interval, the brain decides whether the day will be approached with a growth or protection mindset. Lisa felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. 17 seconds. She began reviewing her typical mornings. She always woke up with anxiety, immediately thinking about everything that could go wrong in the day. Bills to pay, interviews that could be humiliating, opportunities she would probably miss. "I'd program my brain for failure every day," she said aloud, the realization hitting her like lightning. "In the first 17 seconds of each morning, I teach my nervous system to avoid risks." But the study didn't stop there. The most hopeful part was in the section about neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to form new neural connections. The researchers had developed a specific protocol to reprogram the mental alarm system using these first 17 morning seconds. The protocol was surprisingly simple, but based on decades of neuroscientific research. It involved 3 steps that should be executed immediately after waking, before even opening eyes completely. First, activation breathing. 3 deep breaths to oxygenate the prefrontal cortex and reduce amygdala activity. Second, success visualization. Imagining oneself confidently executing a specific action that would normally cause fear. Third, physical anchoring. A simple gesture like clenching a fist or touching the heart to create a neural anchor associated with confidence. The objective, the study explained, is not to eliminate fear, but to reprogram the brain's automatic response to opportunity situations. Lisa read and reread this section several times. There was something deeply logical about it that resonated with her experience. She had always tried to fight fear when it was already installed, when she was already in the middle of a stressful situation. But she had never thought about programming her brain preventively, before the alarm system was even activated. She continued reading and discovered something even more fascinating. The study included cases of people who had applied the protocol. One of the participants was an executive who had lost 3 promotions for lack of leadership presence. After 6 weeks applying the 17-second technique, she not only got the next promotion, but was invited to lead a new company division. Another case was of an entrepreneur who had abandoned 4 business attempts due to imposter syndrome. After reprogramming his morning patterns, he launched a startup that earned $500,000 in the first year. "This can't be real," Lisa murmured, but even while speaking, part of her knew it was. It made too much sense not to be true. It explained why all the motivational techniques she had tried failed. She was trying to change behavior without changing the underlying neural programming. It was like trying to drive a car with the parking brake pulled. No matter how much she stepped on the motivation accelerator, the mental alarm system always pulled her back to the safety zone. Lisa looked at the clock. 3:47 in the morning. In a few hours, she would have the opportunity to test this discovery. For the first time in weeks, she felt something she had forgotten what it was like: hope. But along with hope came familiar resistance. The internal voice that always protected her from disappointments began to whisper, "What if it doesn't work? What if it's just another useless technique?" "You've tried so many things," Lisa recognized this voice. It was the same alarm system the study described trying to protect her even from hope, but this time she had knowledge. She understood what was happening in her brain. "No," she said firmly to the empty apartment. "This time will be different. Because this time I understand the science behind the problem." She printed the complete study, all 47 pages, and began making notes in the margins. She wanted to understand every detail, every nuance of the protocol. If she was going to do this, she was going to do it right. While reading, a profound perception began to form. All her life, she had thought confidence was something some people had and others didn't. A fixed personality trait like height or eye color. But the study showed something completely different. Confidence was a neural state. A brain activation pattern that could be trained, strengthened, programmed. It wasn't about being brave or fearless. It was about teaching your brain to interpret opportunities as possibilities instead of threats. "My God," she whispered, the magnitude of the discovery hitting her in waves. "I can literally reprogram my brain." But there was still a deeper layer to this revelation. The study briefly mentioned something that made Lisa stop breathing: the connection between neural states and what some spiritual traditions called vibrational frequency. When the nervous system is programmed for confidence, she read. The individual naturally emits nonverbal signals that attract opportunities and people aligned with their objectives. This may explain phenomena that some traditions describe as law of attraction. Lisa felt a chill run through her entire body. She had always been skeptical about spiritual concepts, but this made sense in a way she had never considered. Maybe the energy people talked about was simply the external manifestation of internal neural patterns. When someone is programmed for confidence, they walk differently, speak differently, make different decisions. And this, naturally, attracts different results. It wasn't magic, it was applied neuroscience. She closed the laptop and lay down, but knew she wouldn't be able to sleep. Her mind was boiling, processing decades of conditioning under a new light. Each missed opportunity, each moment of self-sabotage now made sense within a scientific framework. But most importantly, for the first time in her life, she had an evidence-based plan to change everything. Only a few hours remained for her to test whether 17 seconds could really reprogram a lifetime of fear. And Lisa could barely wait to discover if science could succeed where willpower had failed. What she didn't know is that she was about to discover that real transformation doesn't happen only in the mind, but in all the energy we emanate to the world. And that when we change our neural programming, we literally change our capacity to attract financial abundance to our life. The alarm clock rang at 6:30 on Saturday morning, and for the first time in months, Lisa didn't feel that familiar sensation of dread when opening her eyes. Instead, there was a mixture of nervousness and expectation running through her veins. Today she would test whether science could really reprogram decades of mental conditioning. She kept her eyes closed and began the protocol exactly as she had memorized the night before. First step, activation breathing. 3 deep breaths, inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4, exhaling for 6. She could feel her nervous system calming down as if a switch had been turned off in her chest. Second step, success visualization. Lisa chose a specific situation that terrified her, making a call to a potential client. In her mind, she saw herself picking up the phone with confidence, dialing the number without hesitation, speaking with clarity and authority. She imagined the client's interested voice, asking questions, wanting to know more about her services. Third step, physical anchoring. She pressed her right palm against her heart and said mentally, "I trust in my ability." She felt a strange sensation, as if she were creating a new neural connection, a pathway that had never existed before. When she opened her eyes, something was different. Not dramatically different, but subtly. It was as if the world had the same appearance, but she was seeing it through a slightly adjusted lens. The morning anxiety that always accompanied her simply wasn't there. "Interesting," she murmured, getting up from bed. She had expected an instant and miraculous transformation, but this was more subtle, more real, in a way. During breakfast, Lisa decided to do a small test. There was a project assistant position she had seen online the week before. Normally, she would spend days ruminating about whether or not she should apply, creating 1,000 excuses about why she wasn't qualified enough. This time, she simply opened the laptop and began writing the cover letter. The words flowed in a way that surprised her. Instead of apologizing for possible inadequacies, she found herself highlighting her qualifications with a clarity she had never felt before. "I have 5 years of experience in administrative operations and a proven track record of process optimization," she wrote, and the words sounded true instead of presumptuous. "I am confident that I can contribute significantly to this project's success." She reread the letter 3 times, expecting the critical internal voice to start pointing out all the problems, but the voice was strangely silent. In its place, there was a calm sensation of competence. Lisa sent the application before she could change her mind. On Monday, something even more surprising happened. She was in a temporary work meeting, a receptionist position at a consulting company, when the manager mentioned they were having problems with the scheduling system. Normally, Lisa would stay quiet, even knowing she had ideas to solve the problem. But this time, without thinking much, she raised her hand. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, and her voice came out firmer than expected. "But I've worked with similar systems before. Can I take a look?" The manager seemed surprised, but nodded positively. Lisa spent the next 20 minutes reorganizing the scheduling system, creating a more efficient flow that would save at least 2 hours of work per day. "This is impressive," said the manager, clearly impressed. "Do you have experience in consulting?" "I have experience in solving problems," responded Lisa, and again surprised herself with her own confidence. "And I believe that's essentially what consulting is." That afternoon, she received an unexpected call. It was from the company where she had applied for the project assistant position. They wanted to schedule an interview for the next day. Lisa hung up the phone and stood still for a moment, processing what had happened. In 3 days applying the 17-second protocol, she had applied for a position, impressed a manager, and gotten an interview. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. But the real test came on Wednesday, during the interview. Lisa arrived 15 minutes early and, instead of getting nervous in the waiting room, used the time to do a modified version of the protocol. 3 deep breaths, visualization of a fluid and confident conversation, and physical anchoring, pressing her hand on her heart. When she was called to the interview room, something extraordinary happened. Instead of feeling the familiar tightness in her chest and blank mind, she felt present, alert, ready. "Tell me about your experience," said the interviewer, a middle-aged woman with a professional smile. Lisa began to speak, and the words flowed naturally. She told about her 5 years in operations, but this time focused on the results she had achieved, the problems she had solved, the value she had added. She wasn't bragging, she was simply presenting facts with confidence. "Interesting," said the interviewer, taking notes. "And how would you handle a project that's behind schedule and over budget?" Normally, this question would have made Lisa panic, but this time her mind remained clear. She thought about the situation logically and began outlining a structured approach: root cause analysis, task reprioritization, transparent communication with stakeholders. "Start with something so small it can't fail," she said, remembering something she had read. "Identify a quick win that can generate positive momentum for the team." The interviewer raised her eyebrows, clearly impressed. "That's a very mature approach. Have you led teams before?" "Not officially," Lisa answered honestly. "But I believe leadership is about influence, not position. And influence comes from competence and confidence." When the interview ended, Lisa knew it had been different. Not perfect. She had still felt nervousness, but different. She had presented herself as someone competent and reliable, instead of someone desperate for approval. On Friday, she received the call. She had gotten the position. Not only that, but the offered salary was 30% higher than she had expected. "We were impressed with your presence and clarity of thought," said the interviewer. "You demonstrated exactly the type of calm confidence we look for in this role." Lisa hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long moment. 1 week. 1 week applying a 17-second protocol had changed her life more than years of trying to think positive. But there was something even deeper happening, something she was just beginning to perceive. It wasn't just that she was acting differently. It was as if she was emanating a different energy. People responded to her differently. Opportunities seemed to appear more easily. That night, she called her mother to tell her about the new job. "You sound different," said her mother. "Your voice is different. More secure." "I feel different," admitted Lisa. "It's like I discovered a part of me that was always there, but was hidden." "What changed?" asked her mother, genuinely curious. Lisa thought for a moment. How to explain neuroplasticity and neural reprogramming to someone who still used a landline phone. I learned that confidence isn't something you have or don't have, she said finally. It's something you train, like a muscle. And how do you train confidence? Start with something so small it can't fail, responded Lisa, smiling. And track your progress, not your mood. After hanging up, Lisa reflected on the week that had passed. The 17-second protocol was working, but not in the magical way she had imagined. It was more subtle, more gradual. Each morning, she was literally reprogramming her nervous system to interpret opportunities as possibilities instead of threats, and the results were accumulating. Small victories creating evidence of competence. Evidence of competence generating more confidence. More confidence attracting more opportunities. It was a virtuous cycle, the opposite of the vicious cycle she had lived in for years. But Lisa knew this was just the beginning. The protocol had broken the self-sabotage pattern, but now she needed to build something new in its place. She needed to discover how to use this new confidence to create the financial abundance she had always desired. What she didn't know is that the universe was about to test her new neural programming in a way she had never imagined. An opportunity was coming that would require not just confidence, but courage to carry fear along in her bag and act anyway. And this time, Lisa would be ready. 2 weeks after starting her new job, Lisa was feeling like a completely different version of herself. The 17-second protocol had become as natural as brushing her teeth, and the results continued accumulating. She had suggested 3 process improvements that were implemented, received praise from her supervisor, and even led a small team meeting. But on Tuesday morning, December 15th, the universe decided to test her new neural programming in a way she had never imagined. Lisa was organizing some reports when her supervisor, Mark, appeared at her desk with an expression she couldn't decipher. There was urgency there, but also something that seemed like opportunity. "Lisa, I need to talk to you." "Can you come to my office?" Her heart gave a small acceleration. The old automatic response was still there, but this time, instead of immediately imagining she had done something wrong, she took a deep breath and followed Mark to his office. "Sit down," he said, closing the door. "We have an interesting situation here." Mark sat behind the desk and clasped his hands. "You know that TechFlow Solutions is one of our biggest clients, right?" Lisa nodded. TechFlow Solutions, the name hit her like lightning. It was David's company, the one that had been sold for $2 million. The company she could have been a partner in. "Well," continued Mark, "they're going through a serious operational crisis. The integration with the buying company isn't going well. The systems are in conflict, the processes are duplicated, and they're losing important clients." Lisa listened, but her mind was racing. What kind of cosmic coincidence was this? "Their CEO called yesterday in panic," said Mark. "They need someone to lead an operational restructuring project. Someone who understands both processes and technology. And it needs to be someone who can start immediately." Mark paused and looked directly at Lisa. "I know you've only been here 2 weeks, but you've impressed everyone with your ability to see systemic problems and create practical solutions. And honestly, you're the only available person who has the profile they need." Lisa felt as if the floor had disappeared under her feet. "Are you offering me the project?" "I'm offering you the opportunity to lead the project," corrected Mark. "It would be a 3-month contract, full-time, working directly with their executive team. The payment would be $8,000 per month, plus results-based bonus." $8,000 per month. Lisa did the calculation quickly. In 3 months, she would earn more than she had earned in the entire previous year. "But," continued Mark, "I need to be honest with you. It's a high-risk project. If it goes wrong, it could affect our relationship with an important client. And you'd be working directly with the CEO and board of the buying company. There's no room for error." There was. The opportunity the old Lisa would have refused instantly. High risk, high exposure, high responsibility. All the things her mental alarm system had been programmed to avoid. Lisa felt the familiar tightness in her chest beginning to form, but this time much more intense than expected. It was as if all the weeks of progress had disappeared in 1 second. The internal voice wasn't whispering, it was screaming, "You don't have enough experience. They'll discover you're a fraud. You'll fail in front of everyone." She tried to apply the protocol discreetly, breathe deeply, press her hand on her heart, but her mind was in total panic. It was as if the confidence thermostat she had built had been set to a temperature too low to handle so much heat. I need to think about this," she said, hearing her own voice sound small and insecure. Mark seemed surprised. "Of course, but I need an answer by tomorrow morning." "It's an incredible opportunity, Lisa." "I know," she said, getting up quickly. "I just need to process this." Lisa returned to her desk, feeling as if she were walking underwater. Everything around her seemed distorted, unreal. She sat down and pretended to work, but her mind was in complete chaos. How could I think I was cured? She thought, feeling a wave of shame and disappointment with herself. 2 weeks of an idiotic protocol, and I thought I had changed decades of conditioning? The rest of the day passed in a fog of mental self-flagellation. Lisa observed each colleague, imagining how they would react if they knew she had been offered a $24,000 opportunity and was considering refusing it out of pure fear. When she got home, she threw herself on the couch and began to cry. It wasn't just sadness, it was anger. Anger at herself, anger at her mind, anger at having believed she could really change. She picked up the phone and almost called Mark to refuse the opportunity immediately. At least that way she would control the rejection instead of waiting for inevitable failure. But something made her stop. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was a last remnant of hope. Instead of calling, she simply stayed there on the couch, letting the emotions pass through her like waves. Slowly, a perception began to emerge through the fog of panic. Yes, she was afraid. Yes, her mental alarm system had fired with full force. But there was something different this time. 2 weeks ago, she wouldn't even have been considered for an opportunity like this. 2 weeks ago, she would have refused immediately, without even thinking. This time, she was at least considering. She was fighting with herself, instead of simply surrendering. Maybe, she thought, progress isn't linear. Maybe it's like climbing a mountain. You advance, then slip a little, then advance again. She thought about the neuroplasticity study. The 17-second protocol wasn't a magic cure. It was training. And like any training, there were good days and bad days. There were moments of strength and moments of weakness. I didn't fail, she said aloud to the empty apartment. I just found the limit of my current confidence thermostat. The question was, what would she do with this information? Lisa spent the entire night awake, alternating between moments of clarity and waves of panic. Sometimes she could see the opportunity for what it was, an incredible chance for growth and financial abundance. Other times, all she could see were 1,000 ways to fail spectacularly. At 5 in the morning, she was sitting in the kitchen with a cup of coffee, looking at the phone. In 2 hours, she would have to call Mark with her decision. Part of her wanted to simply refuse and return to the safety of mediocrity. At least there she knew what to expect. At least there she wouldn't risk publicly humiliating herself. But another part of her, a small but persistent part, whispered something different. What if you succeed? What if this time you carry fear along in your bag and do it anyway? Lisa looked at the clock. 5:17 in the morning, protocol time. She closed her eyes and began the 3 deep breaths. But this time, instead of trying to eliminate fear, she simply acknowledged it. Hi, fear, she thought. I know you're trying to protect me, but this time, we're going together. In the visualization, she didn't imagine herself confident and fearless. She imagined herself afraid, but acting anyway. She saw herself trembling in a meeting, but speaking anyway. She saw herself doubting her decisions, but making them anyway. When she pressed her hand on her heart for physical anchoring, she said something different. I can feel fear and act anyway. At 7:30, Lisa was in front of the office, still not knowing what her final decision would be. She entered the elevator and pressed the button for her floor, feeling as if she were about to jump with a parachute. Mark was waiting for her at reception. So, he asked, and Lisa could see the expectation in his eyes. Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but the words didn't come out. For a terrible moment, she thought she was going to faint. The panic was rising through her chest like volcanic lava. But then, something extraordinary happened. Instead of fighting against the panic, she simply observed it. It was as if part of her was watching another part panic with scientific curiosity. She began, and her voice came out shaky. She stopped, took a deep breath, and tried again. I'm very afraid, she said, surprising herself with the honesty. Mark seemed confused. Afraid? Afraid of failing. Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid of disappointing you and the client, continued Lisa, the words coming out in a torrent. But I'm also afraid of spending the rest of my life wondering, what if? So, she paused, feeling as if she were about to jump off a cliff. So I accept, she said, barely able to believe her own words. I accept, but I need you to know that I'll be learning along the way. Mark smiled slowly. Lisa, if you weren't afraid, I'd be worried. Fear means you understand the magnitude of the opportunity. And honesty about your limitations is exactly the kind of maturity we need for this project. Lisa felt as if she had just crossed a bridge that was burning behind her. There was no going back. She had accepted the biggest opportunity of her life, not despite fear, but along with it. But as she walked to her desk to start preparing for the project, part of her still whispered doubts. Are you sure you made the right choice? What if you really can't do it? What if this is the biggest mistake of your life? Lisa stopped in the middle of the hallway and smiled. For the first time, she didn't try to silence these voices. Instead, she simply said, maybe. But at least this time I'm going to find out. What she didn't know is that accepting this opportunity, not with blind confidence, but with conscious fear, would trigger an even deeper transformation. Because sometimes true courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the willingness to grow through it. And Lisa was about to discover that when you stop fighting against your fear and start dancing with it, extraordinary things begin to happen. 3 months after accepting the TechFlow Solutions project, Lisa was sitting in a conference room in Manhattan, looking at a presentation she herself had created. On the screen, graphs showed an impressive transformation. 40% reduction in operational costs, 60% increase in process efficiency, and recovery of 85% of clients who were considering canceling their contracts. But what impressed Lisa most weren't the numbers on the screen. It was the fact that she was there, leading a meeting with 15 senior executives, speaking with an authority she never knew she possessed. As you can see, she said, pointing to the last slide, implementing the structural changes not only solved the immediate problems, but created a solid foundation for sustainable growth. The CEO of the buying company, an intimidating man named Robert Sterling, who had made Lisa tremble with nerves in the first meeting, now looked at her with something she could only describe as genuine respect. Impressive, Lisa, he said. In 3 months, you accomplished what our internal team couldn't accomplish in a year. How did you do it? Lisa smiled, remembering how this same question would have paralyzed her months ago. Now, she had a clear answer. I started with something so small it couldn't fail, she said. I identified the smallest problem I could solve quickly, solved it, and used that victory to build momentum for the bigger challenges. It was true, but it wasn't the whole truth. What Lisa didn't say was how the first days of the project had been hell of self-doubt and controlled panic. She vividly remembered the first week, when she would wake up at 4 in the morning with her heart racing, imagining all the ways she could fail. The 17-second protocol had become her anchor of sanity, but even so, there were days when fear was so intense that she considered quitting. The turning point had happened in the second week, during a particularly tense meeting where one of TechFlow's directors had publicly questioned her qualifications. "With all respect," he had said, "but do you have experience in projects of this magnitude?" The old Lisa would have shrunk, stuttered an excuse, maybe even left the room. But this time, something different happened. Instead of trying to prove she wasn't afraid, she simply acknowledged reality. "No," she had responded calmly. "This is the biggest responsibility I've ever taken on. But that's exactly why I'm approaching each decision with the care and research it deserves. Experience is valuable, but fresh perspective also has its value." The silence in the room had been deafening. But then, to her surprise, the very director who had questioned her nodded slowly. "Refreshing honesty," he had said. "Continue." In that moment, Lisa realized something revolutionary. Authenticity was more powerful than pretending competence. When she stopped trying to hide her limitations and began working with them, people began trusting her in a completely new way. But the real transformation had happened gradually, through small victories that accumulated like compound interest. Each problem solved, each process optimized, each successful meeting had added a layer of real evidence to her confidence. Track your progress, not your mood. She had learned to tell herself on difficult days, and it worked. Instead of focusing on how she felt, she focused on what she had accomplished. Now, 3 months later, she was looking at the final result, a project not just successful, but exceptional. And more importantly, a check for $32,000, being $24,000 base salary plus $8,000 results bonus. But there was something even more valuable than money. There was the perception that she had discovered something fundamental about how reality works. After the final meeting, Lisa was packing her materials when David Chen appeared in the room. She hadn't seen him personally since college, but he looked exactly the same, just with a much more expensive suit. "Lisa," he said, smiling widely, "you were incredible. Honestly, you saved my company." "Our company," she corrected, smiling back. "You built something impressive, David. Yes, but you transformed it into something sustainable," he said. "And speaking of which, I have a proposal for you." Lisa raised her eyebrows. "Proposal? I'm starting a new company. A consultancy specialized in operational transformation for growing startups. I need a partner who understands both processes and people. Someone who can lead complex projects with the calm and competence you demonstrated here." Lisa felt a familiar heart acceleration, but this time it wasn't fear, it was excitement. 50% participation, continued David. Revenue projection of $500,000 in the first year and $2 million in the second. And this time, he smiled, "You're not going to tell me you don't understand business." Lisa laughed, remembering the conversation in the cafe 3 years ago. "No," she said. "This time I'm not going to say that, so?" Lisa looked out the conference room window. Down below, Manhattan buzzed with energy and possibilities. 6 months ago, she had $1,200 in her account and a collection of missed opportunities. Now, she was being invited to be a partner in a company with potential to earn millions. But the most incredible thing wasn't the external change. It was the internal change. She was no longer looking at opportunities as disguised threats. She was seeing them for what they really were, possibilities waiting to be explored. "I accept," she said, without hesitation. "But this time I want to participate in creating the business plan from the beginning," David smiled. "I wouldn't expect less." That night, Lisa was in her apartment, the same tiny apartment where she had cried over the lost $400,000, but now it seemed different. Not because it had changed physically, but because she had changed. She sat on the same couch where she had discovered the neuroplasticity, studied and reflected on the journey of the last months. The 17-second protocol had been just the beginning. The real secret wasn't in eliminating fear, but in reprogramming her relationship with it. Lisa took her journal, a habit she had developed during the project, and began to write, "I discovered something that changed everything. Confidence isn't an innate talent. It's a muscle that gets trained. And like any muscle, it gets stronger with consistent use and progressive challenges. But there's something even deeper. When you change your internal neural programming, you literally change the energy you emanate to the world. And this energy attracts people, opportunities, and circumstances aligned with your new vibrational frequency. It's not magic. It's quantum physics applied to human experience. When your nervous system is programmed for abundance instead of scarcity, you naturally make different decisions, act differently, and attract different results. Lisa stopped writing and smiled. She was beginning to understand the connection between neuroscience and spirituality that the study had briefly mentioned. They weren't opposite concepts. There were two ways of describing the same phenomenon. When you reprogram your brain for confidence, you elevate your vibrational frequency. When you elevate your vibrational frequency, you attract abundance. And when you attract abundance, you create evidence that reinforces your confidence. It was a virtuous cycle that fed itself. She continued writing, "Each opportunity I lost in the past wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It was because my brain was programmed to interpret opportunities as threats. My mental alarm system was protecting me from success, keeping me safe in mediocrity. But when you understand that your brain is programmable, everything changes. You realize you're not a victim of your circumstances. You're the programmer of your own experience." Her phone rang. It was a message from Mark, her former supervisor. "Lisa, I just received 3 requests from clients asking if you're available for other projects. It seems your reputation is spreading." "Congratulations," Lisa smiled. 6 months ago, a message like this would have left her panicked. Now she saw it for what it really was. Evidence that when you do exceptional work, the universe conspires to bring more opportunities. She typed a response. "Thank you, Mark. I'm starting my own company, but I'll be happy to refer other qualified consultants." Upon sending the message, Lisa realized something profound. She was no longer desperate for approval or security. She was operating from a place of abundance, not scarcity. And this energy shift was literally changing her external reality. That night, she applied the 17-second protocol with a gratitude she had never felt before. But this time, she added something new to the visualization. Instead of just imagining personal success, she saw herself helping other people discover the same secret that had transformed her life. Maybe, she thought, my true mission isn't just to create abundance for myself, but to help others discover that they too can reprogram their minds for prosperity. Lisa got up and went to the window. Outside, the city glowed with millions of lights, each representing a life, a story, a person with their own fears and dreams. And for the first time, she felt connected to something bigger than herself. 17 seconds, she murmured, smiling. Who would have thought that 17 seconds could reprogram an entire life? And the most incredible part, this was just the beginning. Wow, what a fantastic story about Lisa, don't you think? She needed to reprogram the first 17 seconds of each morning to transform her mental alarm system from an opportunity blocker into a possibility detector. Now I want to ask you a direct question. How many opportunities have you already let pass because your brain interpreted them as threats instead of possibilities? Lisa discovered something that neuroscience confirms. Confidence isn't an innate talent that some people have and others don't. It's a neural state that can be trained, strengthened, and programmed. It's a muscle that grows with consistent use. So tell me, are you ready to start reprogramming your own 17 morning seconds? Are you willing to carry fear along in your bag and act anyway? Because the financial abundance you desire might be just 17 seconds away. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications to continue learning about how to transform your mind into a machine for attracting financial abundance. Leave a comment telling which part of Lisa's story touched you most, or if you've had similar experiences of self-sabotage. I'll leave a video suggestion here on the screen for you to continue your evolution and discover more secrets about how neuroscience can transform your financial life. Always remember, you deserve all the abundance in the world because you were born to be prosperous, happy, and fulfilled. I'll see you in the next video.